Ladies and gentlemen, we are live. This is the I Hate Football Podcast. I am your host, Q. Hope everybody's having a good Monday so far. Everybody going back to school. Everybody going. All the teachers going back to work, dealing with these kids. Hope you guys are staying up and are able to deal with these little hellions you guys have to put up with. But I know somebody who is in that same in that particular boat is joining me tonight. You guys know him as the host of the 305 Sports Now podcast. Everybody, welcome to the show, my boy Will. What's up, homie?
How's it going, man? How's it going? Your description of Hellions is appropriate.
I was literally talking to Russ. I got off the phone with Russ Morgan like 20 minutes ago, and he's teaching middle school now. And
Oh,
he was
okay.
and he was telling me, I was like, dude, I don't envy you. I don't envy you in the least. I do not
Yeah.
envy you. I'd much rather do what I do all day, every day, man, than put
Yeah.
up with middle schoolers. You guys,
Yeah.
God bless you guys, man.
Yeah. God bless Russ, man. That's a rough age. Be careful because I don't want to get in trouble, but that's a rough age
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
deal with because their bodies, hormones, and brains are all going like 100 miles an hour. So they
Hormones,
don't have
man.
an
Those
identity. They're
hormones,
all
absolutely,
over the place, man. So boys and girls, as well.
absolutely.
So and you see it with the ninth graders when they first come in. It's like like please grow up, and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But that's why I love high school. At the end of the day, like some of them you can talk to them like as adults. They have plans. They give ideas. So it's a whole different ballgame, man. So all middle school teachers, man, my hats off to you. I
yeah,
will
man.
say that's a very rough age to deal with.
He's telling me, he's like, yeah, because it's a new gig, for him, and so
Okay.
he's telling me about it, and I'm like, man, hopefully you're not teaching middle school, and he's like, dude, I'm teaching middle school, and I was like, oh no,
Did they tell you the subject?
oh no, he's teaching American history in
Oh, good
middle
for
school.
him. Okay, good for him. Good
So
for
so
him.
yeah, well, we'll have you on here at some point. Once we get closer to the season on College Blitz. We were talking about some things and
Okay, cool.
some Saturday shows and everything like that. But yeah, I was like, dude, I don't envy you in the least, my friend. I'm not cut out for for that type of work. So
Yeah.
hats off to you, hats off to him, because you guys
Thanks, man.
are
Appreciate it.
you guys are absolutely the real heroes, man, for sure. Um, but guys, tonight, we want to get into a little bit of something different. We were talking off air, and the subject matters really at this point are kind of, we're about halfway through camp, and with the lack of eyeballs, available, in the IPF and the Carroll Soffer indoor practice facility, the topics of conversation kind of, if you listen to Kane's content, I think it kind of starts to get a little monotonous and a little repetitive. And so, today, trying to stay away from our normal, or from most people's normal topics of conversation, and wanted to get into something a little bit different, right? And kind of talk about some of these rumors and some of the info that's out there right now, and really kind of break down what it means, right? What it means to the particular player, to the particular position group, to the team as in general and as a whole. And we wanted to get started with really the news that's kind of been making the rounds for the last 24 to 48 hours. Two topics of conversation really over the last couple of days. But we'll start with the news that Camp Vaughn, wide receiver transfer from West Virginia, is no longer on the team. And kind of wanted to get your take, man, to see what he's gone, right? And
Yeah.
he's a guy who really never contributed here. So what do you think this means for the wide receiver room?
It'll be fine. I mean, like you said, he never contributed here as well. It sucks in a way because he was very productive at West Virginia, and he did have some. He did show out a little bit at spring. He had a very good spring game, I heard, as well. So it's a shame, But the bottom line, though, is that we have a very loaded depth chart, not just with veterans like himself, with young guys as well that are very promising, and they could just plug in and play as well. So if whatever the reason is, I know that the Kings content creators that have the in aren't really saying what's going on as well. And Mario just basically said today, the Joe Rose show, that he's gone off the team. You wish him the best of luck, and you hope he lands on his feet, somewhere else that he could contribute. But at the end of the day, man, he like you said, he didn't contribute. We didn't see what he could do on the football field. And we have so many guys. All I could tell you is the era of the Cormani McLeanness of our recruiting and talking to players and stuff like that is over. This university, this coaching staff is a proven commodity. They've proven on the football field they're not going to put up with stuff that doesn't fit, what they want to do as a team, or if it messes with team cohesion as well. And what I also heard that in that Carroll Sulphur Center as well, the players themselves, there's a lot of dogs and leaders on that team. And if you're not, cutting the mustard, if you're not pulling your weight, if you're not, trying to fit in with the program as well, they will call you out themselves. The players themselves will call you out, and they will make sure that they're unhappy with you. So that's pretty much where I'm at with Cam Vaughn. Again, wish him the best. He was a starter at West Virginia. We were all happy when we got him. But at the end of the day, man, listen, dude, we got Malachi Tony, we got Barkate, we got Jacobs, we got Moore, we got Upshaw, you have Samar and Wingo and Milan Paris. I mean, we're going to be fine. Okay, I think we're going to be fine without Cam Vaughn.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what you just said. I mean, I think, anytime that you hear about, a loss, right, whether it's injury, whether it's, somebody leaving the program, right, you always kind of look, the way I look at it, right, is I look at it, are we losing production, or are we losing potential, right? And I think the potential that walks out the door, with a Cam Vaughn is the potential for what this offense was missing last season, which was that explosive play, right? This is a guy who's 6'2", he's 185, right? So good size for a college receiver, guy who can get downfield, who can threaten the defense deep. And it's one of the elements of the offense, that was missing last season, right? And I think when you bring in a guy like Cam Vaughn and you bring in a guy like Dre Jacobs from South Carolina, that's what you envision for those guys, right? Along with a guy like Josh Moore, is guys who are able, big guys who can get downfield, who can create some mismatches for corners and everything like that. So, we had talked about earlier, right? This is a team that, before this Cam Vaughn loss was a team that was bringing back, 4 number ones from last year. When you consider, Malachi Tony, Cooper Barkate, and Dre Jacobs, along with Cam Vaughn. So I think you were excited about the body type, right? In terms of the measurables, you were excited about what he brought to the table in terms of, downfield, a downfield threat, a guy with speed, a guy who the numbers don't tell the story on. When you look at what he did at West Virginia last year, right? The numbers don't necessarily, just explode off the screen. But then you also, consider the fact that he played in one of the worst pass offenses in the entire country last season, right? So, the numbers didn't tell the entire story with him, and I think this is one of those evaluations, like and I talked about it on previous shows that this Miami staff is really hitting on these evaluations. When you look at where these guys are ranked, and you looked at your Jacoby Thomases and your Keontae Scotts and your Mo Torres and everything, these guys weren't the top of the market, guys in the transfer portal, right? These are guys that they were very deliberate with, guys that they made good evaluations on and they hit on, right? And so I think we could kind of see that, kind of being the case for a guy like Cam Vaughn. But, there again, right? A guy that's, kind of like, your Hayden Lowe loss, right? A guy that you were excited about, right? A guy that you were a fan of the body type, you were a fan of the measurables and the potential. But, at the end of the day, if there's one position group, that I think a loss of a Cam Vaughn isn't going to really affect, too terribly bad is the wide receiver room. Again, you mentioned them, and I think we all know those names at this point by heart. We can just kind of regurgitate them, at a moment's notice. There, when you're looking at, the top of that room, you've got, I think, like 6 guys that they're really excited about. And then you've got some younger guys, right, that came in this past year that they're really excited about also in time, right? So, again, the loss, again, the potential that walks out the door, you kind of, you have to be kind of disappointed about. But at the end of the day, we lose no production, and I think at the end of the day, when you're looking at that room and what it is that remains in the room, you still have to be extremely excited.
Yeah, no, I totally am. And again, I trust the coaching staff, their evaluation. We've heard them, and the intel from practice, a lot of these guys are stepping up. They're playing well. And when they've been challenged, another guy has stepped up to the plate and tried meeting that challenge as well. Like we talked about, like a couple weeks ago, Josh Moore was your wide receiver 3. Then D Money drops a bomb. She was like, not so fast. It could be Upshaw. Then you hear, Locked On Canes that Moore had this great catch and looked good in practice. So, I mean, at the end of the day, though, we won't exactly know what is going to be on the field to start the game until September 4th against Stanford at 9 p.m.
Yeah, and and by all accounts, I mean, if you heard the way Mario described it, right? I mean, he was deliberate in saying he was dismissed,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's telling, right? Because Mario he's really calculated about the message he delivers, right? And I think the fact that he actually mentioned he was dismissed, not that he decided to leave the team, they mutually parted ways. It wasn't any of that. He said he was dismissed. And I, reading up a little bit, apparently, this was somebody who, you really don't know, because again, they didn't go into detail. Who knows, really exactly what it is that happened. But from what I was reading, kind of multiple types of run-ins, multiple types of, things going on with him, not really being the best teammate, not representing the program and the school in the right manner. I read that he got arrested in Georgia a couple weeks ago for reckless driving. And kind of some other stuff going on in terms of just the way he was getting along with people and everything. So, who knows how much of it was what, right? As we know, and we've spoken about, this team does have a player leadership council.
Yeah.
Right. So when these types of things happen, these are the kind of occurrences that go to the leadership council, and the staff, allows the captains of the team to come together, speak about it, and come to a decision as a group. So I'm assuming that's probably something that happened in this instance. And at the end of the day, they decided that they were going to move forward without him. And you have to trust, if the players, if that's the way it went, and the players have decided, hey, listen, this guy doesn't deserve to be here, then hey, you know what? Good riddance, good luck with everything, and no harm, no foul. You just not every transfer works out. Not every recruit works out. It's just kind of how it goes. But again, I trust in the staff. I trust in the leadership, of these players and the guys at the top, whether it's your Mo Torres, your Darian Mensahs, your Mark Fletchers, so on and so forth. The rest of the, your Ahmad Motons and your Zeke Poisers and all these guys, your upperclassmen, your upperclassmen that are, part of this council, I'd imagine, if they decided that, this guy wasn't a good fit, who are we to disagree? And again, at the end of the day, you accept it. You wish him good luck in his at his next stop. It just, the timing sucks, obviously, because you can't enter the portal right now. I mean, you're going to sit out the season, and so obviously you kind of feel for him in that sense. But at the end of the day, if he wasn't doing what he was supposed to do, then he kind of did it to himself.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah. And so we move on to, speaking of reckless driving, I think, again, the second part of the off the field stuff that's been going on for the last 48 hours is the reports of, Jordan Lyle getting arrested. The mugshots are out there. The list of charges are out there, and obviously some stuff where, not what you want to hear really about anybody, on the team, but obviously, especially about a guy who you're really counting on this year, who by all accounts was having a great camp, looked really good, looked fit, looked healthy, so to hear this at this point in camp is, is a little bit disheartening. My best guess would be, if things really went down, the way they're saying, where, this particular occurrence happened on July 10th, he didn't turn himself in till, essentially like a month later when the arrest warrant was put out. That tells me that it's not. I always just kind of have to, look at things, through a particular lens, and you start with the fact these guys are college kids, right? They're not perfect. These guys are making money, have access to more stuff than most college kids have had, in the last few years. And so, they have some liberties, based on the money, and sometimes they don't always make the, the best decisions. Right. And so when you hear what it is he did, you hope that hopefully there's some context to it, right? Because, the reckless driving is one thing, the evading police is another, right? And you kind of think of, you kind of create this doomsday scenario and what it is that could bring. And so a little bit worrisome, but I feel like at the end of the day, if this amount of time has passed and they're just kind of getting to it now, I have to feel like, there's got to be some type of resolution that allows for him to play, but time will tell, and we'll see kind of where it goes.
Yeah, I mean, when I first saw the news, I texted you right away, Armando, and I told you what I thought. It's the same thing with Dono. That's before I found out that, or at least read completely, that it was on July 10th when the incident happened. So I'm like, oh, he was still on the team. So, listen, I have my perspective on it. listen, you're 20 years old. You have probably a fast car. I don't even know what he was driving, to be honest with you. I'm assuming it was a fast car. And it's very normal, for a 20-year-old to be ridiculous with a car. That's not anything new. We live in Miami. We see it all the time. My one thing is that I think is kind of the issue, not kind of the issue, that is the issue, is the whole evading police. As that's where the felony comes in. So I mean, the university is well aware of it. They're letting things play out. They're giving Jordan Lau, let's call him Jordan Lau the benefit of the doubt. And we'll see how it goes. But I do think I wouldn't be surprised if he's suspended for like the first 4 games. That wouldn't surprise me. Just because, again, when you put on that uniform, you represent the university, and there are consequences, to those kind of actions. So if it would have been which, by the way, the reckless driving was a misdemeanor, he probably wouldn't have been arrested for it. It would have been like a misdemeanor. At least I don't think he would have been arrested. It was a misdemeanor charge. But from what I read on ESPN, it was a felony count that they're looking at. So we'll see, what happens if they, lower the charges, or if the sheriff's department just dismisses it and lets it go. But that's the evading police part is where I think he might get himself into trouble.
Yeah, you never want to hear that, man. Like I said, and as anybody who watches the show knows, that I live in the Metro Atlanta area. Not far from the University of Georgia. Those guys have been driving recklessly for the last 5+ years. It seems like they've gotten a million guys arrested, and all kidding aside, there's Jalen Carter, before the draft, right, was involved in something like horrific where a member of a teammate of his and one of the trainers actually died in a car accident where they were drag racing and where he left the scene. And I mean, those guys have been arrested left and right. And so again, man, like we talked about, they're young, they got money, they've got these fast cars. And so I think a lot of times, given what they do, in terms of their status as football players, student athletes, at prominent programs, I think they kind of, gives them that sense of invincibility and nothing's going to happen. And, again, the reckless driving is one thing, man. Evading police is a totally different story, especially if there's alcohol involved and everything. And so, you don't want to make it only about football because, clearly there are bigger issues and consequences, right? When we talk about what it is that happened with that particular case. But when you look at the football aspect of it, right, okay, what does it mean, right? By all accounts, right, Mark Fletcher has they basically kind of put him in bubble wrap, from what we understand. And really it's kind of been the rest of the guys, right? Jordan Lyle and Shamar Brown and everybody like that. And from all the reports out there, Jordan Lyle looks fit and fast and healthy and rejuvenated, right? Because he basically missed the entire season last year. So he's ready to go, right? And so you have to love to hear that. And then again, you go back to, the body type, right? You go back to the ability, right? And this is a guy that in that room is kind of one of one, right? When you consider, the size, the speed, combination, he not just anybody, because Pringle is fast, right? Gerard Pringle is fast, but he's not built like Jordan Lyle.
No, he's not.
Right? So when you're looking at that room, right? Javier Mallory is a big dude, but he doesn't run like Jordan Lyle, right? And so, when you're looking at, the combination of the size and the speed and something where you didn't have last year, right? It really kind of makes you excited about what he was going to bring to the table in the room this year. Not to say that isn't still going to be the case, but you have to imagine, given what it is we've heard, that there will be some type of suspension, due to the nature of what it is that happened, right? He was arrested, right? I mean, they put a warrant out for him, so on and so forth. So, again, luckily nobody was hurt. Luckily, there wasn't anything, to report on that end, but again, it doesn't seem like something that they're going to just let, kind of go by the wayside. It's very public at this point, and I think the consequences, obviously have repercussions, and I think, in order to appear to the team where you're treating everybody, fairly, I can't imagine that a suspension won't ensue. Right. So, again, like we were talking about with wide receiver, this is a position that, again, as excited as we are about Jordan Lyle, it is a room that can afford to be without Jordan Lyle for, a game or two or whatever it is they decide, given the depth and the talent in that room.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. We saw it last season. Jordan Lyle barely played, and next man up, man, Gerard Pringle. So I mean, it's a very loaded room, with young guys as well. And let's not forget the incoming freshman from next year with Ty Keys, and hopefully we can land another one as well. So I mean, that's a loaded backfield. I mean, it's someone will take your spot. All right. So if you don't act accordingly, if you slack off at practice, someone will take your spot. All right. That's your teammate, but he also wants, he wants his reps.
Absolutely. No, and listen, it's the way you have to operate, right? Because you can't let somebody, do what this guy just did, get himself arrested, and there not be consequences or repercussions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And so, that's the right message to send to your team. It's like, hey, listen, if you're gonna dick around, and pardon my French, you're gonna go and you're gonna play stupid games. Guess what? You're gonna get stupid prizes.
Yep.
And that stupid prize is gonna be somebody's gonna take your spot, and you run the risk on a team this loaded to cause yourself to be a healthy scratch, in a particular situation, right? You're gonna get these guys that are gonna take advantage of the opportunities. And you're going to end up sitting on the sideline, holding a helmet, hoping to get into the game, right? And so, you have to take that into account. You have to be smart. You have to make good decisions, and if you don't, then this is what's going to happen, right? You're going to miss time, and somebody's going to take advantage of those snaps in order to be elevated, in the rotation and the pecking order, and you're going to end up paying the price. So again, you have to make good decisions.
Yeah, the University of Miami right now, under Mark Cristobal, like we said earlier, is in a position where they don't have to put up with stuff anymore because they already have the horses. All right, yep. They already have the workers, in general that can perform. So they really don't have to put up with it anymore. Like they don't have to put up, with childish behavior and stuff like that just because X, Y, and Z. If you don't act accordingly, they could dismiss you. Hayden Lowe was like a top 10 D end coming out of his recruiting class. I don't know how that whole situation, transpired towards the end, because of course the university never releases anything, but they felt fine letting him go. Yeah. They felt fine letting him go. They felt fine letting Cam Vaughn go as well. So it is what it is, man. But I think Jordan Love is going to play. The optics are looking that way as well, but I can't see him. I just don't see him playing the first couple of games of the season. I wouldn't be surprised if they suspend him for like 3 or 4 games. It wouldn't surprise me.
No, I wouldn't at all be surprised, and, we'll see what, what the DA or, whoever it is that's handling the case, what it is that they're going to aim for, what it is that they're going to try and make stick. I don't know of him having a record. Nobody reported that, but, if he did, I would imagine that already would be common knowledge and would be out there for public consumption. So, I'd have to imagine, that this is, the first time, that he's been in any real trouble. So that's going to help him. That, that's going to be to his benefit. But then again, you'll have to see what it is that the facts actually are. What it is that the A is going to push for, what it is that they're going to settle for. If he pleads to anything. So, it's a complicated situation, and you hate for any of these guys to be involved. Again, silver lining, is that nobody got hurt. And so hopefully, that is, hopefully what ends up, being what they look at. Right. And again, if it was something else, if there was damage to a person or, a property, if, somebody, truly got hurt, then obviously you're dealing with a whole different set of circumstances. But, hopefully this is something that's, that's resolved quickly. They come down with his punishment. He serves that, and, and they keep right on moving. But, again, you got to be excited for this running back room, man. This is the deepest running back room. A lot of people are talking since the 2001, 2002. Yep. When you think of the names that were part of that room, your Willis McGahee's and your Najee Davenports and your Frank Gores and everything. So when you're looking at the room, man, it's got like I always talk about, man, talent, depth, experience. They check all the boxes. It's you got the right body types. It's layered the right way in terms of, your where everybody's at, in their classes and everything. And so you have to be really excited for what's there now. You have to be excited about what you have coming in, next season, and a guy like Ty Keys. And so, again, man, this is a room that I really, really, truly expect to just shine, the entire season. They ran for, was it 3,850 yards, 45 yards, 3,845 yards or something like that last year?
Yeah, something like that. Almost 4,000 yards. Yeah.
Yeah. So right at 4,000 yards. And
you can find it for if you want. I think I still have
I remember because I remember your graphic. I remember
that was my graphic. Yeah.
Right. And so, right short of 4,000 yards, right? And so, again, assuming that this O-line, really, has its, act together throughout the season, I don't see any reason why, it wouldn't be a successful running game again, given what you have in that room, right?
Yeah. No, definitely, definitely. I'm trying to find the numbers for you, man. How these first day of school photos are now?
No, you're good. Man. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I remember, man, 30,
Yeah, it was a very high number.
40 touchdown. It was some ridiculous.
Yeah, it was a crazy number. I found the Notre Dame one. Let me see if I can find where'd it go, man? Let's see. It was right before the Joe show. Right. Do people tired of hearing about that one? Where'd it go? The graphic. Where is it? Amir Sears. Whatever. Yeah, it was a high number, man. It was about 3,800 yards.
Yeah. So
yeah, got it right here. Yeah, 3,842 yards and 35 total rushing touchdowns for the season, and average 6.2 yards per carry, 274.4 yards per game in 2025.
That's ridiculous. Ridiculous, right? And so, again, given what Mensa can do through the air, I expect those numbers to drop a little bit, but for them to make up for it on the passing side of things.
Yeah.
Right. And so not because they're going to be deficient in the run game, not because the O-line isn't going to do their job or the running back room, not have the requisite talent you need to put up those numbers. But I think those numbers will be skewed a little bit given, what you have at receiver and what you have at quarterback.
Yeah.
But again, still expected to be a very dependable run game, with that running back room and, the bodies that you have in the O-line room. All right. And so, speaking of the O-line room, the reports are out there. That go against a lot of what a lot of people were expecting, were predicting, and that is, the number one recruit in the country, Jackson Cantwell, apparently not in the running to start at left tackle, like a lot of people were predicting to start the season. And from what we're hearing and from what, the reports that are out there, not necessarily guaranteed to start at guard. Right. I mean, do I expect him to? Probably. Right. But it's not a guarantee. Right. So what do you think that means for Jackson Cantwell and for the O-line?
Yeah. Well, competition, man. Again, we hear these guys just ascend. Like I remember, before spring, Jackson Cantwell's going to be the right tackle. And then he's getting a lot of time at left tackle. So he was doing really good, in practice and stuff like that in that regard. Then, we're hearing that Okunola might take his old left tackle position back when he was a recruit, because he's been doing good at left tackle. So might slipping him into guard and stuff, like be the left guard position. Then you hear a monster Jurassic Park, type of brutes named Ben Cogden, who's been doing really well in practice as well, who's now, ascending, and which I've heard about him, maybe not start being, left guard, but I've heard he's probably going to get somewhere in the rotation, right, as well. So we just don't know. I can't see Jackson Cantwell not starting from all the good things I've heard about him, practice, especially before this week even started. He's still practicing well. He just might not necessarily be the left tackle because Samson's been playing really well at left tackle. He might be the better athlete, at that position. But the bottom line is, though, that did shock me when you told me this morning that, hey, reports have it he may not be. I'm like, whoa, that's a lot. But I have been hearing that, guys like Joel Urban, Ben Cogden, as well, Max Buchanan, but he's not going to be a tackle, but Max Buchanan, like you're hearing a lot of these other guys' names, who seem to be killing it in practice and are moving, these defensive tackles and the defensive ends, like clockwork, and pushing them back on roller, like they're on roller skates. So that's where I think, this is good, man. This is good. The fact of the matter is, even if he doesn't start, this means this is good for the depth of the offensive line, that the number one recruit in the country doesn't necessarily have to be thrown into the line of fire his first season, because, the line around him is just that ahead of the game.
Yeah, man, I'm right there with you, with especially that last part of what it is you said, because that was kind of my thinking, when I was coming up with these topics. And I was having a conversation with a buddy of mine the other day, and we were talking specifically about not so much the O-line, but about Jackson Cantwell. And what I told him was I don't know that I would be worried, right? Because essentially him penciled in as a starter at this point would just confirm what everybody's been saying about him for the last 7 or 8 months, right? But by the same token, that would have caused me concern given the upperclassmen that you have that could play that position theoretically, right? Like if you come in, if he comes in and immediately you're like, all right, he's the left tackle, then to me, I'm looking at that and I'm going, okay, so hold up. So Samson, what's going on with Samson? This is year 4 of Samson, right? I mean, this is a guy who's been in the program, 4 years, right? So how is a freshman? It doesn't matter how tall he is, how much he weighs, how much he shot puts, or where he was in the recruiting rankings. To me, that would have caused me some concern, as it relates to where Samson, stands right now, and and in terms of the pecking order on this offensive line, right? And so, and then you're looking at, okay, how about a guy like Matthew McCoy, right? A guy who, same thing, right? Been around for 3 years, right? And so, you're looking around at some of these upperclassmen, and you're going, wait, but what's going on with them? So for me, honestly, I was a little bit relieved, if I'm being honest. I was a little bit relieved in that, okay, Samson's doing his thing, right? Matthew McCoy's doing his thing, right? And so you don't automatically bring in Jackson Cantwell and pencil him into one of the starting, tackle spots, and okay, well, now there's 4 spots left to figure out, right? And so again, I think, what does it mean for the O-line? I think that the O-line is showing that the depth that people were talking about and that we're assuming was going to be there is actually there, because they've come out and said, I think Maribal was saying, something like he likes 10 guys on the O-line, right? And if we're going left to right, if he likes 10 guys, and you can reasonably, assume, who it is he's talking about, you got to like, for example, right? Let's say you start from the left and you go Samson, you go Cantwell, you go Ryan Rodriguez, at right guard, let's say for argument's sake, I'll go Max Buchanan just because he's older than Ben Cogden, but let's say Max Buchanan and then Matthew McCoy. I like that starting 5.
I agree
with you. Like, I'm totally cool with that. And then when you look at what's behind them and you go left to right, you go, okay, let's go Jaden Wilkerson, let's say. S.J. Alufai-Tuli, depending on where you like him, right? There, Mario has come out and said he's shorter, but his arm length is good, and he's heavier than what people imagine. So, I'm kind of starting to get the idea that this guy is kind of being groomed for starting center, if I'm being honest, right? Because of his height. And so let's say you go from left, Jaden Wilkerson. Let's say you go, I don't know, who do you want to plug in at left guard?
Joel Irvin, maybe. I mean, just throw a name out there.
How about Joel Irvin? Center, you go, SJ. Right guard, you go Ben Congdon, and then at right tackle, whoever it is you want to throw in there.
Cannon Pickett, about
Jamal Merriweather, let's say.
Okay, there we go. Jamal Merriweather, forgot about him.
So, I mean, right there, you just named 10 guys. And then you can still go behind them. You can still name another 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Right. And so I say all that to say that the depth is there. Right. And I like the idea of having, for example, your bookends are upperclassmen and your centers an upperclassman. And if you want to go and insert a true freshman in Jackson Cantwell, a true sophomore and a guy like Max Buchanan, or if you want to go 2 true freshmen, right, and at left guard and right guard, well, now you surround him now on both sides. They're not on an island by themselves, and they're surrounded by upperclassmen, because Ryan Rodriguez, a 6-year guy, and then Samson being a 4th-year guy, and McCoy being a 3rd-year guy. I think you kind of literally insulate those guys between upperclassmen so that, they've got the help they need in order to, figure things out, on the interior of that line. So I do not hate starting 2 true freshmen at guard, considering the pedigree, the measurables, right, and who you surround them with. I wouldn't have any issue whatsoever, even though, again, I've heard a lot of great things about Max Buchanan. I'm sure, like you have, people saying great things about him. So again, if they wanted to start him, I don't, I wouldn't have an issue with it. Those guys know best when it comes to O-line, especially, man. Look, across the board, obviously, we're not going to put up an argument in terms of starters. We have our own ideas, things we've heard, things we've seen. But at the end of the day, whoever it is they decide to put wherever, you live with it, given the recent results. But you have to be excited about, what you have with Jackson Cantwell and Ben Congdon when they do officially get on the field.
Yeah, I want to go a little bit back in the Samson conversation. He was a highly touted recruit, coming out of the state of Massachusetts. He was, I think, the second ranked offensive lineman, only behind CC. He's had, he's been plagued with injuries, throughout his career as well. But the reason why I wouldn't have been so upset about a Jackson Cantwell left tackle and a Samson Okunola left guard, because Okunola had got run at guard last season. And he did really well, So I think that maybe I would think my opinion, that just would have been the position he plays best at the collegiate level. And then you start the true freshman at left tackle. But I'm not upset, man. If you put Jackson Cantwell at guard, or you put Okunola at tackle, or flip them and put at Cantwell at tackle, and you put listen, man. This coaching staff has earned the benefit of the doubt, okay, and they've earned the respect of everyone across the country. I think they know what's best for this offensive line. This offensive line is stacked. It's NFL. It looks like an NFL football team, okay, as well. They're playing. They hit like it as well. I'm just excited. And even then, if Cantwell doesn't get the start, that's actually not, like I said, that's not a bad thing, because when CC got the start, it was Mario's second season. The team he wanted wasn't yet, fully put together. So it was understandable to put the top offensive lineman in the country at the right tackle position or left tackle position if you would have gone either way. But Miami has built something right now. They've built depth at that position. So even if Cantwell doesn't fully start or isn't starting day one for Miami, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because Samson's going to the NFL next year. Ryan Rodriguez is going to the NFL next year. You're gonna have time to put Jackson Cantwell as a starter his second year of the season. So we'll see how that goes. But again, it's either way, whatever the coaching staff thinks is best, I'm going to fully support.
Yeah, man. And listen, not all 5 stars are created equal. Yeah. Right. And we've seen that because of, two of the 2 best tackles in the country, when they came out of high school, when you're looking at, Francis Manoa and Samson Okunola. The thing is the level of competition, right? CC played at IMG, was playing, Division I guys throughout his entire schedule. A guy that was built differently than a guy like Samson was. And when you look at Samson and his level of competition, obviously not the same type of competition. A guy who it took him a little bit longer to get acclimated in the whole deal, and that's fine, right? It's not everybody develops the same way. Not everybody, everybody's timeline is different, right? And so we're seeing that now. But by all accounts, Samson missed the spring, but he's looked really good in fall. Yeah. And so, again, to me, starting him at left tackle, assuming he earns it, is something that I'm good with, because I want to protect a guy like Darian Mensah. I want to protect his blind side with experience, right? So a lot of people have said starting offensive line in game 1 won't necessarily, be the one starting, in game 6 or game 12. And that very well might be the case, right? Cantwell, may take over come, game 6, right? Will they switch him and Samson, right? With Cantwell, kicking out to tackle and Samson kicking inside? Who knows? That's something that might be on the table. But at the end of the day, we're going to give this staff, specifically Alex Mirabal, the benefit of the doubt. Whichever 5 they trot out there, whichever 6 and 7 they decide to bring on the field for their jumbo packages and everything like that, we're going to go with what it is they decide, because they've earned the benefit of the doubt, right? They recruit the position at an elite level. They develop at an elite level. They've proven that, and there's no reason to think that any of that is going to change anytime soon. So I'm excited about the bodies and the body types and the talent in that room, and I think whoever it is they pick to be the starting 5 from week to week, I have to assume that, they're going to be really good, and they're going to be able to accomplish what it is that the team needs them to accomplish.
Yeah, man, we're in agreement, man. We're totally in agreement. I can't wait until September 4th. Absolutely. I'm definitely looking forward to that day.
Absolutely. And then we move over to the tight end position. The tight end position is, I think, of all the position groups, on the roster, I think this is the one with the most questions. Right. Because, if we're breaking down the room, and again, the way we've talked about it stuff, when you talk about talent, depth, and experience, is there talent? Yes. Is there the desired depth? No. Is there the experience? Absolutely not. Right. And so, once you get past, a guy like Elijah Lofton, which I think most people agree isn't your traditional, your traditional tight end body, right? When you look at the way he's built, his height, arm length, right? The whole deal. Like he's just not a guy. He's not like this 6'5", 6'6" guy. He's not 250, 260, right? And so, that's why you were excited about a guy like Luka Gilbert, and what he brought to the table. But then the reports are that, not only has Lofton looked good, but also, a guy like Gavin Mueller has looked good,
Yeah.
right? Also, I don't know if you've noticed, and totally off topic, why in the hell is it so difficult for some of these people to pronounce Mueller? Have you not heard that? Have you not? Have you not?
How do they
People are
call
like
them?
Mueller
Bro,
and
I have
Mueller. I'm
not
like,
heard that
what are
at
you
all.
like? I
Really?
don't want to. Yeah, and it's a prominent Canes podcast. Two
Okay.
guys who are super plugged in, super connected. And I'm sure you can kind of put two and two
Okay.
together. Love those guys and their content, but they absolutely butcher Gavin Mueller's name every chance they get. Mueller. Like I'm like, where are you guys getting these pronunciations, man? Like it's Mueller. I don't understand why it's so difficult. But anyway, a guy with the measurables, the body type, a guy who they're excited about, just in terms of, the ability, right? But he's a guy who hasn't been playing football long, right? He's a guy who's,
Yeah.
comes from the basketball court and everything like that. But, he's a guy who, again, who moves great. By all accounts, a guy runs, I think like a 4.6 40, based on what he said. Like he said that in an interview, that he was lasered at 4.6. So you got to be excited about that. You got to be excited about the size, right? Because he's like on the low end, he's 6'5". On the
Yeah.
low end, he's 250. And he may be closer to 6'6", 260. And he can move, at a run the 40 and 4.6. So you got to be excited about him and what he might bring. Guy like Izzy Briggs, guy who was, really highly recruited kid out of California, who's put on a bunch of weight and looks, he's transformed his body, looks fast and fluid and runs good routes. But the closer you get to the line of scrimmage, I think we know that it's more difficult to play, right? The game is more physical, especially coming from high school, right? And so for those guys really to be, inline guys, guys that can block and, go out and run routes, I think is a little bit difficult. So we'll see what they bring. But also, name that we hadn't heard in a while because of injury is Jackson Carver.
Yep.
They were saying that had a really good scrimmage.
I've
A
heard.
guy who coming back from an ACL injury, if I'm not mistaken, from last year. A
Yeah.
guy who was a highly recruited kid, who's a 4-star kid, coming out of I believe it was Texas, if I'm not mistaken. And so again, good to hear that there's other names and bodies emerging, in that room because I think that they need it, right? I think they need somebody to step up outside of Elijah Lofton. So to hear that a guy like Jackson Carver is healthy, and looking good and producing is I think something to be excited about.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. I think the tight end position is going to show out. I mean, Elijah Lofton right now is at 237. He was like I think at 250, 260 last season. So he's transformed. Another guy's just transformed his body as well. Izzy Briggs, I think came in like at 215 or something. He's like 235 right now. He's a big dude, right, as well. So I am excited about this position. I think because I'm not at practice, what they're doing is that VD's handling the blocking side of things. And I think the Elijah Lofton's Muellers, they're working with Kevin Beard and the receivers as far as pass catching goes. Because I've seen like whatever they've been able to release inside the U when they've done, they're in the practice films and stuff like that. I've seen like Elijah Lofton catching with the wide receivers. So I think that's kind of like what they're doing. Like they're kind of like co-practicing with each other, the tight ends and the wide receiver. I think that might be a little bit something that's going on as far as like the route running goes, the pass catching goes, and I think that they're working with Vidi primarily in the pass blocking, pass protection perspective, run blocking perspective of their position. That's what I think is going on with that team. So I am a little more bullish on the tight end position. I mean, I think the receivers are gonna ball this year. I think it's gonna be their year because of all the talent you have on the football field. But I think the tight ends will surprise a lot of people. And I think Jackson Carver will be surprised if he gets some run this year because he was highly athletic before he got hurt. I remember the spring game, he caught a touchdown pass. I think it was from Ja'Cory Brown, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I think he's a guy that, last season, I think he early in the season, I think he looked, he looked like a guy who was going to produce, who was going to at least contribute. I don't know how much he was going to produce,
Yeah.
but at the very least, be part of the game plan. And so again, you given the size, given the ability and the whole deal, right? You would have liked to have seen him at least be available, right? Because
Yeah.
clearly, I mean, they lacked options last year for sure, right? And so yeah, I mean, to see him, to hear that he's available and he's healthy and he's producing is a great thing. So Chuck, what's up, buddy? Sure, you've already spoken about the methodical rise of Gavin Mueller. So I apologize. I'm late to the party. Let's see. Still speaking about Mueller. He's apparently blocking ball, running like a gazelle, getting control of the playbook. Yeah, you came in kind of right at the end of that conversation. I started off with the fact that they were butchering his name on all these podcasts. I don't understand how or why. I don't feel like it's that difficult to name to pronounce. For some reason, Mueller was something that that these guys kept saying, and this is kind of weird to me. I don't understand why, but yeah, I mean, I always kind of go back to one of the things that I touch on a lot is the body types, right? And it's what I've always kind of gone back to. Hayden Lowe, body type; Cam Bond, body type; right? Jordan Lyle, body type. In regards to guys not being there, right? And I think last season, tight ends kind of the same thing, right? I think there were some guys that you were excited about, right? A guy like like Riley Williams, like people have spoken about. We missed Riley Williams last year, right? A body type that wasn't in the room, that was ready to play. Let's say, because there was some guys maybe like Luka Gilbert, right? That the measurables were similar. This year you got a guy like Gavin Mueller. Measurables are similar, but young guys, right? Luka Gilbert was a guy that was young last year, right? Who played, but still a guy who was young. Gavin Mueller this season, right? Similarly, guy with the measurables, but a guy who's young, and you can only really depend on a young tight end, regardless of how big he is. There is that acclimation process, in terms of playing close to the line. That's a difficult thing to do, right? It's rare when you see, your true freshman come in and really contribute, in a big way at D tackle, at, left tackle, let's say, right? It's your special guys, your future first round picks that come in and contribute, early on in their careers at those positions, right? It's more typical at running back, at receiver, at corner, safety, that kind of thing, right? The closer you get to the D line, the more difficult it is because of the physicality.
Yeah.
So, again, I think there's talent in that room, but I think we need some depth, right? And they have to stay healthy, right? They have to stay healthy in that room. They can't afford, to lose another body in there. Obviously, adding Jackson Carver helps. But I think as the season goes along, I have a feeling that we'll get those contributions from a guy like Gavin Mueller, from a guy like Izzy Briggs, a guy like Jackson Carver. I think those guys will start to carve out a niche for themselves. Maybe a guy like Owen Ruskovich, right, who was a walk-on,
Yes.
guy who's a big dude.
Yeah.
On the blocking side of things, a guy like Cole McConaughey that came over from defensive end, where I don't think Cole McConaughey this season is going to be a receiving threat, but where I think he can contribute given his size and the physicality that allowed him to play defensive end, is to be able to come in and be a blocking tight end on running plays, right? I think that's where a guy like Owen Ruskovich and a guy like what did I just say?
Cole McConaughey.
And Cole McConaughey, excuse me. I think those guys can come in, and in that particular set and that particular play design, I think they can contribute.
No, I mean, I think that, like I said, I think the tight end position is gonna surprise people this year. I really do believe that. I do think that we're gonna get more production out of them. From a pass catching perspective, I don't want people being angry, because I do think that the wide receivers are going to eat more this year, just because from a talent perspective. But the tight ends will not be a disappointment. I don't think they're going to be a disappointment like they were last year. They kind of underachieved, last season, not just in not just in catching the football, like Elijah Rowe was such an integral part of the offense the year before, but also in pass blocking. All right, we love to talk about Alex Bauman, man. Alex Bauman, either he blocked or he whiffed, as well. And there's times where Elijah Lofton, was never known for his blocking to begin with, but he would struggle, right, as well. I just don't think we're going to see those struggles this year, because of who we have as a tight ends coach and what his philosophy is. And also, we have some athletes this year at tight end as well, young, inexperienced, but solid athletes.
Yeah, there were some rough moments for Elijah Laughlin
Yeah,
last season. By all accounts, he was heavier than he needed to be. He wasn't as healthy as I think he wanted to be, and I think that showed itself, in his play, right? I think he dropped passes, he missed blocks, so I don't know if that was injury plus lack of concentration. It was a couple of things with Elijah
yeah,
Laughlin last year. So by all accounts, he's kind of turned the page, on last season. He's slimmer, he's moving well, he's making plays, and so again, man, we just need some just some form of something that resembles a threat from time to time at tight end. I don't think again, I don't think there's going to be any situation this year where anybody contributes like an Elijah Arroyo did. But again, the threat of a playmaker at tight end, I think will go a long way. And again, I think as the season goes along, I think there'll be a couple guys emerge. I think those guys will need a little bit of time. A guy like Gavin Mueller, a guy like Izzy Briggs, and then again, your blocking types. So there'll be your Owen Ruskovich and Cole McConaughey's. But I think at some point in the season, again, 3-4 games in or whatever, I think we'll start to see that tight end room kind of make an impact on the game. Because again, I think there is talent on in that room. I think there's ability in that room. And I think at some point this season we'll get to see it.
yeah, absolutely, man. Again, excited for September 4th. Can't get here quick enough.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, like we talked about, guys. We we want to get on and just kind of touch on a couple of subjects, and some of the rumors and stuff coming out of camp. Their 11 practices in, plus a scrimmage. Good thing is everybody appears healthy. Haven't heard of of anybody of anything serious going on in terms of injury, which is great to hear. Because again, even though we do have that depth, we don't want to be losing anybody to injury. So by all accounts, everybody is healthy. Everybody's ready to go and available. And September 4th can't get here fast enough, man.
Yeah.
We can we can start talking about the actual games, instead of speculating and talking about warrants and guys not behaving and being being off the team. And again, we're right around the corner. The season actually kicks off not for Miami, but the season does kick off week 0 is coming up a week from Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. They'll be kicking off. So some of your G6 games, and all that. But hey, it'll be football and I'll be watching. So, man, like I said, I'm ready. September 4th can't get here fast enough. Obviously some other dates, that we'll be looking at, October 3rd versus Clemson, October 17th, I believe, against FSU, November 7th against Notre Dame, so on and so forth. So, I'm looking forward to every one of them, but, definitely some, a handful of them that I'm looking forward to more than the other ones.
Yeah, definitely, man. I mean, I'm totally excited, and I can't wait for that November game. I'll tell you that much. Finally, shut those Notre Dame fans up.
Absolutely, man. I'm ready for that. Hopefully make a return trip. To South Bend. Last time I was there, they lost, and so hopefully this year they right that wrong and keep this train going, man. Hopefully, expect a lot of success, a lot of good times, with this offense, and again, hopefully great things to come, man.
The last couple times that Miami's lost, well, not the last couple times, I forgot the one in 1990, but when Miami's lost to Notre Dame, it's always been like on a fluke little play. Like I remember the Cleveland Gary fumble that wasn't a fumble back in 1988, and then you had the one that you went to. They just didn't recover a fumble. Notre Dame fumbles a football, and they couldn't get the recovery. And I think they would have won that football game, and they were just recovered the football in that game. So it was a very close game. It was very hard fought.
Just didn't pull it out, and also, off the field stuff. Anybody who's ever wondered about going to South Bend, let me be the first to tell you. So me and my buddy Alvin, we flew to Chicago, stayed in Chicago, and drove to South Bend. Super easy drive. It's like 2 hours. It's all highway. The people in South Bend, I was very pleasantly surprised. They were they could have been the nicest a group of fans that I've ever run into wearing Miami gear. They were welcoming, they were polite, they were respectful. Everything about it was first class. So I don't, obviously different people have different experiences, at different locations and whatever that may look like. I can tell you that based on our experience, I wouldn't hesitate at all to go back. Like I said, even the ushers, I remember, giving the usher, because they were still using, paper tickets there. And the usher looked at me, he goes, hey, welcome to Notre Dame. Is your first time? I was like, yes, sir, it's first time. He's, hey, enjoy yourself, good luck, have a good time. And I was like, wow, I was shocked.
Yeah.
Everybody was nice at the bars and, the student body, people around campus. Cause we kind of walked around campus and, went to like the grotto and kind of, really nice campus. But zero complaints, man, zero complaints. So anybody, that's watching this and is thinking about going out there, go out there, man, enjoy it. And again, I can't imagine that wouldn't still be the case, in terms of how you're going to be treated. So, again, highly recommend it because it's a cool place to visit. So
Q, what you're saying is that they're only mean on the keyboard.
Yeah, I mean, how that goes, man. You get, there's keyboard gangsters and every.
Jeez, man, because on the keyboard, they
there's keyboard gangsters, in every,
fan base,
and every fan base, in the entire country, man. So
because whatever they internalize that they don't show when you're there presently, man, they show it off in the comment sections.
I also told them, if you remember from last season, before the season started, I told them that they wouldn't necessarily be treated the same way I was, if they went to Miami. And I would imagine, they probably figured that out once they got there. Love on Miami fans, they're hardcore, they're real fans. Not the nicest to rival visiting groups, I will say that. And so again, I didn't hear of a whole lot of it going on, but I would imagine, there was some of it going on.
I can imagine
for sure. So
I can imagine,
is what it is, it's kind of how it goes, but yeah, man, we'll see, we'll see, here in a couple weeks, September 4th, like we mentioned, can't get here fast enough. And we'll blink and it'll be over. So, you guys enjoy every week of it, man. Get immersed in it. Cause unfortunately it doesn't last super long, man. You blink and it's done. So, you got anything else, bro?
No, man. I just want to let everybody know that this upcoming Wednesday evening, I will be having on my show 305 Sports Now on YouTube the first couple of Miami Dolphins football. Lou and Ashley, aka from the SoFlo Sports Podcast, aka 305 Sports, babe. They will be on. Or it's like a hybrid episode because they're not just Dolphin fans, they're also Canes fans as well. So we're doing a Canes Dolphin episode. We'll talk about the preseason for the Miami Dolphins, and we're going to talk about expectations for the Canes this upcoming season as well. So tune in Wednesday evening, 9 p.m., 305 Sports Now live. And you guys all know that I do talk to y'all when you're in the comment section and chatting it up. Especially you, Juan Manuel.
Absolutely, yeah. Juan Manuel is I'm surprised we didn't see him in here today.
I know, man. I know.
He's listening to another pod for sure. There's no way he's not listening to a pod.
Well,
guy's always listening to a pod.
To be fair to him, you had Gio on, then right after Gio, I think it was Brad Tejeda and John Michaels, so he must be tired.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, that's a lot. It's a lot of content right there, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, you guys make sure you check out my boy Will, 305 Sports Now.
Thank you.
Lou and Ashley, man, great people. They put out some great content. Huge fans of the Dolphins, of the Canes. They're legit. They're legit. They're always at some kind of sports function, man. I envy them. The stuff that they get to go to. So, check them out and what it is they put out. As far as for me, Hate Football Pod on Twitter /X. I Hate Football Podcast on YouTube, on Instagram. Do me a favor, go on there, like the content, subscribe to the channel, to the pages. And, man, I think that's all I got. So for my boy Will, I am your boy Q. And we will see you soon. You guys have a good night. Talk to you soon. Go Canes.
Go Canes.